What's going on, everyone? So today, Friday, 2017, we're going to be talking about motors. And motor is a subject that comes up almost in every single live broadcast. People want to know about motors. People want to know what motors do. People want to know the differences between the different motors that there are out there for tattoo machines. So today we're going to be addressing some of the general aspects about motors. And one of the things that people want to know, which one is the best motor for rotaries or for cartridges. And we're going to start by comparing the different motors that we have. We're going to be talking about those motors. Right now I have, in my hand I have a Spectra Edge X. And the motor that we use is a very popular motor in this machine. It's the Maxim 216000. This is a motor that you're going to find in a lot of tattoo machines. This is a copper graphite brush motor. So we're going to be talking about the differences also between brushes and brushed motors, because there's a little bit of a misconception thinking that brushless, more expensive, is actually better than brushed. So the first thing that I want to do, guys, is let me see all these messages that we have coming up in here. And thank you to everyone that have shared this video. I've seen a lot of you guys repost it in social media, Instagram. Much appreciated. Danielle Valeris, hey Gaston, what's up? Lethal, Justin Salimi, everyone is coming in, joining us, guys. Great. So you can actually feel free to post this link on YouTube, Instagram, whatever. If you consider that a fellow artist is going to be benefited from this live broadcast as well. So might as well feel free to do so. Let me just straighten this camera a little bit. There you go. Because I have the fisheye lens. I always have problems with this lens. It throws me off a little bit. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this motor, the Maxim 216000. This motor is what we call a brushed motor. It uses brushes, and what the brushes do, they actually cause the motor to rotate, and the process is called commutation. So commutation in brushed motors is actually a mechanical process that forces the motor to spin. So I'm not going to get a lot into that detail because it's pretty simple but pretty complex to explain. But the commutation, basically what causes the motor to spin, is achieved by two brushes. Those two brushes are actually connected to your cable, basically the positive and the negative. So when you step on your foot switch, you are sending electricity to the motor, to each one of the brushes, and the brushes are touching the commutator. The commutator is actually positioned around the bottom of the shaft in this motor, and what the commutator is like a sequence of copper plates. So when the brush touches the commutator activates the electromagnet. Basically, the electromagnets in the motor start generating a magnetic field, and that magnetic field causes the motor to rotate, because outside the shaft, the core of the motor, there is another magnet. And by magnetizing the coil cores of the motor, you're actually causing the motor to spin, because they are repelling the outer magnet. Repelling or attracting? Repelling or attracting? Interesting. So that's basically how a motor works. Most brush motors, the motors that you can find in those electric cars, it works the same way. Now, brushless motors, in the other hand, they do not have that mechanical connection to cause the commutator to make the motor to rotate. What they use is actually they use an electronic circuit that tells the motor to spin. And because of that, a lot of people think that brushes, okay, they don't have brush, so they are actually better because they have electronics. But you gotta understand, number one, brushless motors are a little bit more expensive. And number two, yes, there are now mechanical parts like the brushes that can go wrong, but there are electronics that actually can go wrong. And I actually managed to burn a brushless motor in a very popular machine that I own. That was it. And it was just, I fried something in the PCB and there went the motor. And the PCB is actually embedded in the motor, so it's not something that you can replace a resistor or something that you can do it. Basically, you have to debug the PCB to find the cause of the problem, and then good luck finding that part. So that is one of the reasons why we actually opt and continue using brushed motors in all our rotaries. Number one, It really drops down the price of the machine a little bit than brushless motors. And number two, they're more efficient, meaning that they will require less current. Well, I mean, that's actually not true, because now the last ones that I've seen coming out from Maxon, they also draw not that many amps, but it's, it's easy to replace. The motor is actually usually brushless motors are a little bit bigger than this type of motors, and some of them, they require the voltage to be higher. And the reason why those brushless motor require the voltage to be higher, like some machines will now start 11 volts, is because those the electronic component that drives the motor require a higher volt. So if you're used to tattoo with a machine, let's say 4 or 5 volts, very, very low, well, if the brushless motor was not designed specifically to perform in a tattoo machine, most likely the motor is going to start kicking in at 10 volts, and by the time the motor starts, it's already spinning too fast, at least, with the ones that I've tried. I know that right now some companies are working with the manufacturer to actually tweak the motors and tweak the requirements for that PCB that the motor has, so the motor can actually run at lower voltages. But let me tell you a little bit more. Now that you understand the differences, let's talk about a little bit more about brush motors. So this one right here is the Maxon, like I mentioned before, the 216000. You're gonna find in many, many rotaries. This is a motor that has been on the market, for a while, and it's a very, very sturdy motor. Now, when choosing a tattoo machine, manufactured, one of the things that you have to ask yourself, rather than if it's brushes or brushed or how many RPMs and all that stuff, you should ask the manufacturer if the motor has ball bearings. Ball bearings is actually one of the most essential things that you are going to need in a motor. The reason being is because the shaft, the shaft spins concentrically in the center of the motor, but most likely there's going to be a cam attached to the shaft. Cams, in order to generate displacement, the weight of the cam is actually displaced in what do you call that? They are displaced off the center of the motor. So when the motor spins, it's actually dragging a cam that actually pushes forces, to the sides, and those actual forces, well, depending how you look at it, and those side-to-side forces is what causes the motor sometimes to prematurely wear off. If the motor does not have ball bearings, what's going to happen is that the shaft is going to start having a little bit of play. And this happens with the motors that are lower end, or those tattoo machines that you don't know who made them. Usually they do not spend the extra buck to put bearings in the motor, and what they have is what is called sleep bearing. And the sleep bearing is just a tiny piece of brass with a hole where the shaft goes through, and that's basically what retains the shaft while the shaft is spinning. But what happened is, because it's brass, and it does not have any type of balls or anything causing the shaft to spin along with it, what happened is that the sleep bearing, which is a solid piece of brass with a hole, ends up, wearing off, and that's how motors get damaged. So the main thing is to find out if the motor of your manufacturer has ball bearing. Now, until 2014, we used to make the motors. We used to make our machines, not the motors. We used to make the machines with a single ball bearing. So basically, a ball bearing right here, right at the exit of the shaft. They used to have a ball bearing there, and it used to have a sleeve bearing in the back. That is more than enough for more tattoo machines. As long as you have a really good ball bearing, you are going to have really a really steady performance of your motor. Now, in 2014, we actually changed to dual ball bearing, and the reason why is because the manufacturer agreed to put another ball bearing, because we order a lot of volume, in the back. So instead of having one ball bearing and one sleeve bearing in the back, now we have two ball bearings. So imagine this. This is the shaft, and now I'm clamping the shaft with a bearing, and I'm clamping the shaft from the bottom with another bearing. So now the shaft has nowhere to go more than just spin. And we've been having a lot of great results with the motor. So a brushless motor, has a span life of about maybe a year and a half, and those brushes are going to wear off. So you have now two type of brushes. The most common brushes that you're going to see in most tattoo machine is number one is the precious metal brush, and number two is the copper graphite brushes. The ones that we use here are the copper graphite brushes, and you want to try to stick with a motor with copper graphite. The reason being is copper graphite brushes, because they have copper and graphite. Graphite assists with the friction. So as the shaft is spinning, the brush, is touching the commutator, and because it has copper, it's more slippery, so it wears off less than a motor that has precious metal. Now, precious metal is just a little piece of wire, sometimes like 3 or 4 hairs of wire touching the commutator, rather than being like a thick piece of brush. So I don't know if you remember those little electric car racing cars that they used to have those 2 brushes at the bottom, and you have to put in the racetrack, and then you would have remote control, and those brushes were metallic, and those brushes used to wear off, I remember, and you have to replace them. So motors with precious metal brushes are going to be kind of like that. I mean, not like that, but it's just a piece of metal, a piece of copper or brass, wires touching the commutator, where copper graphite is a much more robust type of brush. And they are spring loaded. They have a spring that always ensure that the brush, as the brush wears off, touches the commutator. So this is the reason why we have stuck with Maxim 216000 for so many years. It's a very reliable motor. It's small in size. This one right here is the 17 millimeter. And we haven't had like many problems with them. Most motors and more things are going to spin really fast. At some point you could have some hiccups with the motor. And since we actually transitioned to a dual ball bearing since 2014, I mean, we haven't had many problems. We're gonna talk about what not to do to cause problems with your motor. That's gonna happen in just a bit. Now, brushless motors, because they have electronics, so you need room to house the electronic. And now this motor have 2 connectors. Brush motors only have a positive and a negative. Now brushless motor, they have 8 connectors. I mean 8 wires. And every wire has to do with the amount of coils that the actual core of the motor has. So you may ask yourself, well, can I get a motor with 2 wires? Yes, you can get a brushless motor with 2 wires, but what happened is that first, those 8 wires from the sequence of coils has to go to a PCB, and then from the PCB you have the 2 wires for the power. So they're a little bit bulkier. Usually something comparable to this is going to be in the neighborhood of the 23-24 millimeters, when this one is 17 millimeter. And in reality, it's just for the same amount of money. Now, just to give you an idea, a brushless motor is going to cost you sometimes 2 and 3 times more expensive than this motor. Now, the life of the motor, some people claim that yes, indeed, they have a better life in the motor, but I still have machines that, and not only our machines, I have machines from other makers that I've used and I've abused, throughout the years, and the brush motor still working fine. So we have now seen a need to increase the size of our machines, increase the prices of our machines, just to bring you the brushless technology, because in reality you're doing exactly the same thing with both motors. And brushless motors also have bearings. They also have some sort of protection to protect the shaft, and they're a little bit more fragile if you drop them. For example, there is a Maxim motor that a couple of rotaries use right now, and instead of having the shaft spin inside the motor, what happened is that the actual case of the motor is what spins with the shaft attached. So you have to house them, very accurately. The casing cannot be rubbing the housing of the motor, and therefore you have to make a housing a lot bigger, and changing the size considerably compared to what we're used to right here. So now I want to say that tonight's live broadcast has been brought to you by Jen. Jen is Jesse Smith's apprentice, and Jesse Smith called me the other day and told me, I have my apprentice, she has a couple of questions, can she talk to you? And I'm like, sure, no problem, but what are those questions? Well, she wants to know about motors. And I said, you know what, motors, I haven't talked about motors in my live broadcast, this could be a good time to actually address all the questions that she and some other people may have, and just create a video with it. And that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. So actually, I want to read you guys the questions that she sent me. So Jen says, "Hi, Gaston. My name is Jen, and I'm Jesse Smith apprentice. He mentioned to me that it would be all right if I send you a few questions about your rotary machines. There seems to be a lot of info floating around, but I figure you would be the best person to speak with you. Blah blah blah." So the question number one goes, I was reading about the difference between brushed and brushless RC motors. Unfortunately, I couldn't find too many specifics, though, on whether a rotary machine motor is brushed or brushless. I read that brushless motors generate a lot less friction, thus keeping the motor from overheating. But I wasn't sure. Based on your experience, do you know if rotary tattoo machines motors are universally brushes, or would it depend on the brand? What type of motor do FKR machines have? So that's question number one. So we have 4 questions. So question number one, brushless motor, less friction, better brushes. Okay, now let's bring up all the facts. So indeed, you do not have brushes, right? By not having brushes, there is less friction, but you are going to realize that there are a lot of machines that have brushed motors and they do not overheat. And usually the brush is not going to cause the machine to overheat. What is going to cause the machine to overheat is actually how much current the motor is pulling. And if some of you guys are familiar with some of the power supplies like the Icon and the Critical, they can measure amps. And amps is actually the number that tells you how much current the motor is drawing. So let's actually do a little test right here. So as you're tattooing and you're pushing the needle on the skin, you're basically applying resistance to the needle. That resistance is actually applying resistance to the motor that's spinning. So in order for the motor to keep up with your demand, the motor is going to draw more current. Therefore, by drawing more current, you have more current circulating through the coils. And that is what it causes a motor sometimes to warm up or heat up. Now, motors that run warm, they're actually, that's actually normal. I mean, you may be familiar with a fan, you touch a fan and sometimes the motor is warm. You may be familiar with an AC, you touch the motor, it's warm, and some other power tools, even toothbrush. If you use a toothbrush for too long and you actually apply it, pressure in it, the motor is going to start warming up because of the same reason that I just told you. It's not actually friction, it's actually the amperage that the motor is drawing from the power supply or battery. That is going to be the main reason for a motor to warm up. Now, if everything goes well, the most resistance that you're going to have is the resistance from the needle poking the skin. But in some other situations, you may have even bigger problems, and this is going to happen even with brushless motor. That's why I want to outline all the facts. Number one, if you overlube the tattoo machine, this is something that I've been addressing in a lot of videos. Any tattoo machine out there, if you put a lot of lubrication where the machine actually slide or the piston or whatever is causing that reciprocal force, you are going to have compression of that oil, and that oil is actually going to break the slider or the dry bar or whatever is trying to glide. It's actually going to try to hold on to it. And again, by having that type of resistance, you're going to be drawing more current. Therefore, you may be actually sucking more current from the power supply, causing the motor to warm up. And this is going to happen also with coil machines. It's exactly the same, because the motor, what it is actually a sequence of coils. It's exactly the same. Exactly. I mean, very similar concept as a coil electromagnetic machine. With an electromagnetic machine, you're going to have the same thing. As you apply force or as you increase the rear spring tension, you are going to be having that resisting, as part of the equation. And in order to keep up with your tattooing, you're going to increase the volts, and the power supply is going to try to draw more current from the power supply. So heat is not directly connected to the friction of the brush with the commutator per se. It has something to do, but I mean, you're not gonna find noticeable heat from the brushes, especially these brushes right here that I mentioned before. They are copper graphite. As you guys know, graphite is a very slippery material, and you're not gonna have that problem. So that goes to answer the first part of this question. Then Based on your experience, do you know if rotary tattoo machine motors are universally brushed or brushless? Now, there is nothing universal. Manufacturers use whatever they feel better suited for their machines, and it's just that. There is not a reason why you would go brushless or brush motors. To be honest with you, it's all about what do you think is best, for your product. And in our case, we opt to go with this. We try the brushless motors. I've been also experimenting with motors for drones, and I haven't found a motor that I'm like, wow, this is the perfect size, I want to use it. And the motors that I have seen, they are either too large or too expensive, and that's another problem. So as of right now, we're gonna stick to brush motors. They have been doing a really good job. So let's see right here. Let's see. Boom. There you go. Sometimes you gotta remove some people that are actually insulting and stuff like that. Anyway, guys. So what I was gonna tell you. Let me read some of the questions. What the hell is this? Do DC motor work? Your account has been getting too many reports. If it gets more reports, your account will be terminated. Wow. This seems to be another hater or spammer. Man, it's unbelievable. Now people spam on YouTube. Can you believe that? People jump on a live broadcast to spam. Wow. 1313 said Maxim has been true rotary motor choice for years. Yeah, and there are a couple of brands, big players these days in motors, that most tattoo machines use. One is Fallhaber, that brand is from Germany, and the other one is Maxim. Both companies at some point, both owners were part of the same thing, and then they split ways and they created their own motors. That's why you're gonna see similar motors from both. What is it? Man, white people are like really. Anyway, what I was gonna tell you. So yeah, so both motors, both companies are gonna have similar motors. I guess they are trying to compete with each other and kind of like try to obtain customers. So you're gonna find that you're gonna have a similar motor from Fallhaber, and then you're gonna have a similar motor from Maxim. So. Those are the two players in the industry. What else? So the last question is, what type of motor FKRN uses? And yes, we use the Maxim motor. Now let's go and read question number 2. So she's asking, I was reading in a forum that it's better to have a larger motor that requires more volts to make run, or a small motor that requires less volts to run. In your experience, is that the case, or is it just a matter of preference? Okay, so basically here what Jen is talking about is size. If size really mattered, and size, physical size does not matter. What it matters is the specs of the motor, the winding of the motor, and the output power of the motor. Now, it all depends of many things. It depends of the type of winding, also the type of magnets. Most motors have brushed, no brush, what do you call it? Neodymium magnets. Neodymium magnets, also known as rare earth magnets, or magnets are super strong. And motors that use that type of magnets versus the El Nico magnet, which is another type of magnet. El Nico magnet is that black magnet, the old school magnet. That's called El Nico magnet. So motors that use El Nico magnet, because the magnet's weaker, are going to be a little bit bigger than neodymium. In some cases, like considerably bigger. So this motor right here, they use the neodymium magnet. Those magnets are very strong. So you can get the same power in a motor like this, probably compared to a nickel magnet of a motor of 23 millimeters, and this one is 17. So that goes to show you that not necessarily a bigger motor in size is going to entail more power, but what is going to determine how well the motor performs is, the output power, and that's going to be determined by the winding, and it's going to be determined by the size of the magnet of the motor, and a couple of other things. Hold on, let me just block this guy. Block. Yeah, just block that guy that was cursing there. Anyway, let me see. Wow. There you go. So let me see. What else? Let's go. Was that question number 3? Is there any major benefit to using direct drive machines over a linear action rotary machine or vice versa? It is just a matter of preference, or do you think that... Okay, that's actually more talking about tactile machines, so I'm going to continue to the 4th question that actually talks about motor. Doesn't matter if the machine motor runs clockwise or counterclockwise motion. I assume no, but I can't seem to find much information about that. Okay, so that is a question that I get asked all the time. In fact, we have got calls and we have got people really, really worried because their motor spins this way or spin this way. So this is what you guys have to understand. The way the motor is going to spin is actually, it's going to be determined by the way the connector goes to the power supply. So if you have positive here and negative here, and you have the positive terminal here and negative here, the motor is going to spin in a direction. But now if you flip the cable, meaning that you flip the inputs on your machine, you're also going to get the motor spinning in the other direction. So with this type of motors, the brushless motors, and brush motors, there's not going to be any difference or any specific reason why your machine is going to perform if the motor spins this way or the other way. End of the day, the motor is going to do a loop, and that's all you need to generate the motion, the reciprocal motion. So it does not matter. There is no reason why you should be worried about. That's going to be determined how the power supply manufacturer decided to put the positive and negative. It's going to be determined how the cable manufacturer decides to assign the positive and negative. And it's going to also tell how people solder their terminals to the connector on the motor. To be honest with you, we just don't pay attention to that because it makes no sense. It makes no difference, because there are so many variables. Even if we decided to put, okay, the outer side of the housing is going to be the negative and the inner side is always going to be the positive, it's not going to mean anything if you're having a cable that has, mixed configurations compared to the power supply. So there are a lot of variables, so it does not matter at all. So that is question number 2 for Jen Bean. So Jen, thank you so much for asking this question. You have inspired me to this live broadcast tonight. So now I am going to go over some of the questions, guys. So let's see. Let's see. Exactly what is the reference of the motor your machine uses? The motor that we use is the Maxon 216000, and you can actually Google that name and you're going to find it on the website. You're also going to find the specs. I was planning to actually talk about specs about the motors, but I'm like, what? If I start like drilling you guys with a lot of technical information, I'm probably going to miss the point, and I didn't want to do that. So I hope you guys are understanding so far, the difference about the different kinds of motors that you have. And another thing that I'm going to talk about is some other type of motors that, yes, not every single motor rotates. So let me resolve the question and I'll go to that. Christopher Conner say, cannot wait to get the new pen. Been watching the cartridge game and staying with traditional rotaries and coils, and I feel your professionalism will be the game changer. Thank you, sir. What else? Well, guys, just ask me a couple of questions before I move on to the next topic. Jane Bean, thank you so much for watching and for sending me these questions. So, Chris Engel say, how many commutators do the 216000 have? Good question. I believe they have 8, if I'm not mistaken. 8 or, something like that. They have to be paired, because the motor has 2 brushes. So you need to have a commutator on this side and this side. So you are going to have multiple of 2 commutators. So I think it's about 8, if I'm not mistaken. I know that the Fallhaber has less commutators than the Maxim, but a lot of machines use the Fallhaber. For example, we are trying 2 motors right now for the new pen. One of the motors that we're trying is actually Maxon, and another motor is actually Fallhaber. And both motors are brushed. We tried the brushless motor, make the machine too big. We did not see any improvement on performance. I remember the beginning when we were making the first prototype heat because of, we have parts like getting stuck and stuff like that. We had the same problems with the brush. Versus the brushes, and that right there, did not seem to help in any way, with the process. So we've been testing hardcore a bunch of brush motors. We tested the motors that our current machines have. This one right here, which is the 26000. We tried many motors from Maxon as well, and Fallhaber. As some of you may know, most pen machines are known for having a wider motor, and the reason why is because to convert rotational motor, well, at least our system and some of the system out there, like the Swatch system, you need to have torque. And the reason why you need to have torque is because usually you're going to have spring tension applied to a cam or to a plate. And that's something that you don't have with most rotaries. With most rotaries, you have, yes, a stay-up spring, but that stay-up spring does not apply a lot of tension to the plate or the cam. Now, with pen-style machines, because of the way the machine, most people design their machines, you're going to have a spring like our machine. So we actually went with a motor, which I think is the motor that we are going to be launching the machine with, that is actually big. But because the pen is like 25 millimeter, it doesn't matter if it's 21, 22, 24. The motor actually fits and makes the pen look small. So we went with a larger motor because we wanted to have a pen with graphite brushes. So I think our pen is going to be, till this day, the pen with the motor with the most wattage output and with graphite brushes. Most rotaries out there is the one that I actually did autopsy on. They had precious metal brush. Like I mentioned before, precious metal, those have a little bit more friction. Those wear off a little bit faster. And I wanted to have graphite, copper, graphite metal. So I think we're going to be launching the machine with this motor. Very, very powerful. Probably the most powerful motor that I've tried on a rotary machine. And this motor, we worked with a manufacturer to make some tweaks. The size of the magnet that this motor is going to have and the kind of magnet this motor is going to have is a magnet that we actually tested. And this motor is going to be configured for ourselves. It's not that we made this motor, but this motor is specifically configured to our needs because it was a catalog motor that they use for some other application. I think in the medical field, we changed the magnets, we added the 2-ball bearings, we changed the shaft, the dimension of the shaft. There are a couple of tweaks, so that motor doesn't exist in the catalog. And that motor is made by Maxon. So probably if you go and look at the motor on the Maxon website, you're not going to find it because there's not a part number for the motor. I guess there's going to be now one once they create the motor for us. And I've been having great results. Why did I want to go with a big motor for the pen? Well, because a bigger motor, bigger magnet, larger coils are going to give us more output, are going to give us more torque. And more torque, yes, entails a little bit of less, heat. Because as the motor increases in size and as the magnet has more power, the motor can actually deliver more. And that's the simple reason why. So I just wanted to have a motor that was very robust, and have a motor with like really nice brushes, and did not want to have a motor that was square like some of those amazing brushless motor, but it didn't fit our application. So what else? Let me read some of the questions. Yeah, my nose is itching. I'm a little bit sick. I'm still a little bit like with a flu. I don't know. It's not a flu, congested. All right, Christopher Conyer, and correct me if I'm saying your name right, says, thank you for explaining this regarding the upcoming pen. The price makes all the research so much worth it to me. The ability to have less heat is a must. Guys, we another thing that I want to talk about the pen, we're going to be doing pre-orders, okay? So I don't think pre-orders are going to happen before June 15. Perhaps it's going to be June 1st or something like that. But jump on the pre-orders, go to fkhonors.com, enter your email on the main banner on the website, and those who register on that database are going to get an email to pre-order the machine at $5.99. And there's some surprise for those who pre-order the machine. So I'm not going to talk about that right now because that's not the purpose of this video. But fkhonors.com and go and check it out. Let's see. Okay, 1 second, guys. Let me just take care of some comments there. Okay, Antisomio. ¿Qué manera más rara de enterarme de que alguien de México? All right. Dina Cook, can't wait to see your Bimini Blue version. Always killing the ocean live work, boss. Much respect. Great. Oh, no, that wasn't Dina Cook. That was actually 1313 ink. Yeah. Let's talk about Dina Cook machines since some people are interested in it. We're doing a machine with Dina Cook. It's going to be a Spectra Edge X. The machine is going to be completely from top to bottom Bimini Blue. That's one of his favorite colors. He also has a line through Fusion Inks that has all the blues that he uses in his marine life tattooing. So we're going to be putting a machine together, the Dino Cook signature machine, and I'm assuming it's going to be available at dinocook.com or some link on his website or Facebook. More information coming up to you guys. Anyway, Shane Swenson say, stoked for you to start making cartridges. A lot of people want us to do cartridges. It's like every single live broadcast, people say, hey, you should make cartridges. We would love to make cartridges, but I mean, I have so many projects, going on right now that what I want to do is I want to launch the pen, I want to launch the power supply, and I want to launch some of the other projects that I have in the pipeline before actually maybe taking on more projects. What I was going to tell you. So there's so many cartridges out there, and some of the cartridges that I've been using lately, some of you know already because I always talk about them. Helios is putting really nice cartridges. If you haven't checked them out, Helios spelled with an H, so Helios. What's the website? Let's see. So Craig was kind enough to actually send me a box of needles. No cost, no compromise for me to test, and I was actually surprised because my stigma with cartridges is that everyone is rebranding cartridges, and although these cartridges may look like some other cartridges out there because they're all based on the same geometry, the needle configuration and the performance of the cartridge I really like it. The cartridge is actually silent. The needles, I inspect every cartridge with a magnifying glass. I was very surprised about the quality of the needle. And I'm going to search for the one Helios tattoo cartridge. Let's see. And the website is heliostattoo.com, and you're going to find everything there. So check them out. And again, I like the Cheyenne, some of the T-Tex, some of the legacy cartridges. There are a lot of good things. Okay, let's continue reading. Gaston, I heard the sign hit similarly to a coil machine. Would you talk about the mechanism a little bit? All right, let's talk about a little bit about the sign because we're talking about motors, and this actually leads of why the sign hits different than most of our rotaries. It's not that it hits different, it just feels different because of the weight distribution and because the motor has a lot more power than all of other machines. Now, more power in the pen doesn't mean that this motor is less better, if that's a way of say things. And no, the reason why we have a more powerful motor is because the mechanism is more demanding than this mechanism. In reality, you're gonna have about the same performance. Now, because the motor has a lot more torque, allows you to actually control the machine a little bit better by simply dialing the volts. Some of the comments that people have expressed to me is that they're surprised how well the machine saturates the skin, how easy it is. And for example, my friend Popo, Zampo, Ultimate Ink told me that he actually feels like he's actually painting, because does not feel the need for the hard poking or the rubbing the needle against the skin to get the saturation. He's like, no, I just can go like this and there goes the line. I go like this and there is the saturation. And that is the result of the power of the motor and the refinement of the mechanism. Like I mentioned before, this machine right here does not have a swash mechanism that relies on like a swivel motion, like a swash motion to operate. So it's more like a coil machine. Our machine, the rotational motion is converted to this, and that's the reason why you get a feel like a rotary machine. You get the forward and backward, forward and backward. There is no oscillation like a direct drive, or there is no oscillation there is oscillation, but there's not that swash movement that sometimes slows things down. So let's talk about swash mechanism. I like swash mechanisms, but the swash mechanism is going to have a dead point at some point when the swash does that, and then you reach forward and there is a little hesitation and goes back, and this little hesitation and goes forward. Most rotors do that too, but this one will go forward and backward, just like a coil machine. I cannot talk much about how we designed the system for obvious reason, and you'll find out when you get the machine. It's very simple, very sophisticated at the same time. The mechanism, But you guys are gonna like it, you know. So that's all I can tell you. What else? Have you noticed that cartridges tend to not work as well at 20, 45 minutes? Why is this? No matter what the brand. No, no, I did not notice this, that the cartridge per se is the cause of the problem. What I do notice is that, I mean, and again, I'm not a color guy. I don't do a lot of color work. You know, most of my work is black and gray. But when I do work with color, I realize that, you know, you have to flush your needle constantly, because if you don't flush the needle constantly, what's going to happen is you end up with ink build out, and that build out dries in the needle, causing friction. So basically, the more ink that dries inside your cartridge without being flushed, you know, you are having more friction with your needle. And sometimes that's what can be causing the motor to warm up, you know, because if you have more friction, like we explained before, you are going to have, your motor's going to have to draw more amps from your power supply. So we have another 20 more minutes. So I would recommend, especially for those color guys, like, you know, getting the habit, you know, of flushing your needle like pretty often. But be careful, because a lot of flushing, a lot of water in the needle will affect the pigment. So I guess you're gonna figure out what works best for you. You know, maybe have a paper towel and dab it. Obviously, do not run the machine on a paper towel, because paper towel is gonna get stuck inside the cartridge and the needle, so you don't want to do that. But flush the needles if you're having that consistent problem, you know, with needles slowing down. Now with black and gray, I don't experience that, and you know, myself, the way I'm doing black and gray right now, when I get a chance to tattoo, it's like, you know, I have a cup of black, a cup of white, and 2 cups of water. So in 1 cup of, you know, I will dip in black, and then 1 cup of water for my darkest tone. So basically, I use that water to mix my darkest tone as I go, and then my other cup of water to actually dilute the black from this cup of water that has the darker flushing with the other. That's how I've been tattooing for the past year. You know, I'm not mixing anymore like that. I guess I got a little bit lazy, but I seem to find better result actually that way. So because I'm dabbing in water a lot, I don't have the problem. Okay, what else? Chris Engel say, I agree, bands expand through after time. Yeah, that's something that I noticed, that some needles become looser and then they start sounding a little bit more after some use. Did not found that being a problem with Cheyenne for sure, because they have that membrane that's really tough. Maybe that's why they did it like that, because probably they tested and they realized that that was a problem. But I did not have that problem with the Helios, and I know that the Helios, I think Helios is going to make cartridges with membrane pretty soon, but I did not have that problem with them. And you know, things to try. And you know, if the needle goes bad, just replace the needle. I know it's a needle and it costs a couple of bucks, but I mean, if you're in the middle of a tattoo, just swap that needle. You know, all it matters is the good end result. What else? So Shane is gonna try rinsing more. Everyone else in my shop has the same issue. Yeah, I mean, just encourage them to do that. I mean, sometimes a simple solution, a simple tip can actually fix a problem, or something that you thought it was a problem of a motor, for example. Now that we're talking about motors, it can be just a problem outside of the machine, outside the motor, or outside the body, or outside the whole machine overall. You know, I know that this is something that has been brought up to my attention a couple of times, especially I think it was Philadelphia. I was talking to a customer. He was tattooing at the show, and he told me that he was having the same problem. He's like, look, listen, when I tattoo, after 20 minutes or so, my machine starts getting warm. So I'm like, okay. He brought the machine. I inspected the machine, run the machine. Perfect. I'm like, look, the motor sounds good. The slider's moving great. Your grip has, there's nothing that tells me that there's something wrong with the machine. So then I ask him, where do you tattoo? He said, no, I'm working right here. I'm like, do you mind if I actually go and watch you tattoo? He's like, yes, I'm about to start a portrait of a cat. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I watched the tattooing, when we're talking. And as we were talking, I realized that he was barely flushing, rinsing the needle. He was tattooing, he will dab in between colors and will not flush the needle. In fact, he had a very small cup of water. And this is something that he was doing. With paper towel, he would actually stop tattooing and pinch the needle and do this a lot. And I'm like, look, listen, I don't want to tell you how to do your work, and I don't want to get in your business. But I mean, what you're doing right now can cause actually some paper to travel in your tip. But even worse, you haven't been flushing your needles. And then I'm like, what you're doing right now with a paper towel is actually you're trying to peel away all that buildup that has stuck to your needles, and now you are, and now your machine start warming up. It's like, yes, and he put the machine on his face, like, yeah, you're right, it's warm. So I tell him, look, do me a favor. Is there any reason why you're not flushing more often your colors? Your color is pretty solid. And he's like, well, I mean, usually, I just, I'm very fast. And he was attributing the fact that he doesn't flush as an inconveniency. And I tell him, why don't you try to flush your needle more often? At least every now and then go, rinse the needle completely, like remove all the pigment from your needle. So I left, because I had someone watching the booth for me. I went back to the booth. Then I saw the guy on Sunday, and I'm like, man, I finished the cat tattoo, and I did another tattoo afterwards, small tattoo, and oh my God, what a difference. Wow, the machine, and he was blown away. And to me, it was like, it was something so simple that sometimes people, will get worried about things like that happening, and they will blame it on the machine right away, when in reality, there may be something else outside of the tattoo machine. Now, don't get me wrong. Things can go wrong in a tattoo machine, and they do go wrong. Everything that's mechanical is going to have at some point something going wrong, or may have something going wrong. But I realize that most of the problems that I've seen with motors are actually attributed to something else outside of the machine. Over lubing is one of them. People that actually want the machine to run faster, or think that the machine is going to do a better job because it has more oil, like I explained before. Oil, more than what the oil can fit inside the machine, the slider, the piston, is going to expand, it's going to compress, it's going to try to eject. And when that happens, usually the place that the oil finds its way is the bottom, gravity. And what's going to happen is that the moment oil gets in here, most oil that we use in our tattoo machines is it's actually synthetic. Synthetic is non-conductive. So when that motor sits in between the brushes, you're gonna start having commutation problem. You're gonna start having heating up of your machine. The oil is actually gonna compress inside the machine because clearances in the motor are very, very tight as well. And a couple of times, when we get a motor, the first test that we do is we remove the RCA and we blow the casing from the back. And when we do that, you can see oil seeping through those holes right here. These are kind of like the vents and mounting holes, so you got to be really careful. That's why we have it on our manual. Do not over-lube the machine. Only one drop of oil, and before you re-lube the machine, make sure that you extract all the oil. So let's talk about how to avoid that problem with the oil. One of the things that I've been suggesting to our customer is that when you're lubing the machine, you're getting the habits of having those spray cans, those keyboard dusters, compress air in a can. And when you lube the machine, for example, let's say this machine, you're gonna put the drop of oil there, run your machine really fast, like maybe anywhere in the 15 volts for about 5 to 10 seconds. And as the machine is running really fast, blow the slider inwards to force that oil to actually travel forward. And in the event that the oil is going to escape, it's going to escape from here, not from here. So what that's going to do is two things. Number one is going to remove the excessive oil that your slider is not going to use. And number two is going to even out the lubrication of your machine among the parts that are supposed to be lubed up. So that is step right there. Get in the habit, and you don't have to lube your machine so often. If you have a Spectra Ajax and you use the product for 100, 150 hours, you're not going to have to lube it again. So don't think that because you put more oil in your machine, you're going to get a better performance, because in reality, you're going to be making things a little bit worse. So that's my advice right there. All right, Daniel Valerie say, I can't seem to find any manufacturers of the Camstra wheel flywheels. Manufacturers of the cams for what machine though? Amador says, so is it true that if you pee over the fresh tattoo, it heals with more intense color? No, that's not true. What else? So I've been prototyping the sign for a while. It's gonna replace everything due to the range of gear. Imagine having every machine into one. Yeah, man. I mean, it's actually that. It's a lot of machines into one, and the grip. What do I think about graphite powder instead of oil? Okay, this is mountain color. That is a really good question. Graphite, it's good if it's impregnated in the material, meaning that the material has in its composition graphite. Now, putting graphite dust in a machine, I do not recommend. I actually done it before. The first Halo I remember, and graphite, yes, it turns slippery, but it turns into a mess. And you know, if for any reason you get some humidity inside the machine, it starts like turning into a paste, and not a good thing. Oil is going to, you know, keep the part lubricated, and it's actually going to isolate the slider, for example, in this machine from moist. So I don't recommend graphite for the slider. What else? What else? What else? Will design replace the EdgeX? Okay, that's another question that we get asked all the time. No, design is not going to replace any machine. And when you think about it, design, that's basically the same things as the Spectra Halo, as the Spectra EdgeX. You know, it has give like the Spectra Halo. It has it works with cartridge like the Spectra EdgeX. It has a ratcheting system like the Click Ergo. You're gonna get the same performance of an EdgeX or a Halo or Spectra Direct. You know, we're not gonna be discontinuing this machine, especially because the Scion is a machine of its own. You know, it doesn't require this type of grip, so it's a machine on its own. But you know, we're also actually stepping up this line right here. We are about to launch the RPG Click disposable. I'm assuming that those are gonna be due maybe next month or something like that. And you're gonna have the same grip disposable. So for those guys that like that type of setup, you know, this machine is going to be probably a better option than a pen. You know, the pen also requires some you know, some adjustment to the technique. So I'm sure the pen is not going to suit a lot of people as well, you know, like every single other machine out there. You know, tattoo equipment is very subjective, and it's up to the artist. So I will never want to create a machine that will replace something else, you know, and the only one that can answer that question is yourself. You know, you would ask yourself, does this machine replace everything else that I've been using? And, you know, I guess you guys have the final say on that subject. Okay, batteries are gonna die. No cord. Thanks for the knowledge, my friend. Until the next time. This is Prestige Body Arts. This live broadcast is going to be archived, so you're gonna be able to watch it later. Best stroke on EdgeX for salt and pepper. Salt and pepper. Okay, that's a good one right there. You know, he's asking me about stroke, and this is Homar Tamares. He's asking about best stroke for salt and pepper. Sorry, guys. I need to drink a little bit of water because, ooh. And this pod is sponsored by, just kidding, it's not sponsored. It's sponsored by me. I bought it. Okay, salt and pepper shading. Salt and pepper shading is known for being a bunch of dots, you know, dragged around. So that's how you get the salt and pepper shading. How do you get dots separated? Basically, it's the opposite of smooth shading, salt and pepper shading. So how do you get that? You're gonna get that in many, many ways. Number one, slower machine. Number two, longer stroke. The slower the machine is, the more time the needle has to hang in there. The longer the throw, the same thing is gonna happen. So I would say the best cam is actually the longest cam you can find for salt and pepper shading. I found myself, and I don't do a lot of that sometimes, you know, I try to bust a little bit of old school salt and pepper, you know, stippling type of shading, and I use the 3.5. But what I do is I drop my machine. Now, the motor also is gonna have something to do with it, because if the motor can keep up power at low voltage, you're gonna be able to achieve the same effect without having to go with a super long stroke. And with these motors, you're gonna be able to achieve that. With a 3.5, you know, you're gonna be really, really comfortable doing that, because this motor is gonna allow you to drop the voltage. And the pen also has been designed for that. In fact, I think I am going to have an additional motor for the pen that is going to be slower by nature. So it's gonna have a different winding, probably, and that probably gonna become an option for those artists that like exactly that. Because I've got a lot of requests about traditional people and people that do the pointillism. Oh, I feel the pen is gonna be comfortable for this because the form factor would it be great for pointillism. And yes, you know, you're gonna be able to drop it, but I'm thinking that probably we're gonna introduce another motor that is actually going to be slower by nature for that type of work. So that's that. What else? What do I think about Donald Trump? I don't talk about politics here, man. John Cyberstone, which cam voltage would you recommend for aligning with larger needle grouping cartridge with a Halo 2? I've been always fan of the 3.2, 3.5, so I would recommend that you go with the middle one. To me, that one gives you speed, gives you penetration, gives you everything. You know, anything more than that, I've personally never found it necessary. More than 3.5, I think it's a little bit more too much, but some people love it, so go for it. What else? I'm a little bit congested. I hope I can finish this live broadcast without sneezing again. Okay, thanks for all your time and effort, guys. Thank you so much. What else? Have you tattooed with a Cheyenne? Yes, man. I have tattooed with most machines out there. You name it. I tattoo with every single machine that comes out. I'll buy it. You know. Part of my research and development is to see what's out there, you know, to acknowledge other products and get to tattoo with everything, you know. So yes, I've tattooed with Cheyenne. I've tattooed with every machine that you can imagine. Now, sorry, I got the fan on. My throat is getting dry. Guys, I want to let you know that, see this hat right here? A lot of you have been asking, hey, where do I get the hat? Well, finally, you can get the FK Iron hat, the snapback, on the website. Go to fkirons.com under Pro Team, the link Pro Team, and you're gonna see the hat right there. So we have two. One is the Stealth model. This is the new logo. It's a snapback, really, really comfortable. This one is a snapback, but my request with this hat was that it was smooth touch, that, you know, that hat kept the shape, and it's a little bit stretchy. So this means that as you resize the back of the hat, the hat doesn't lose its shape. So it always looks squarey, which is the way I like it. And the other reason why I like this hat so much is because it's not like that high, and that's what I liked it. I was gonna go with New Era, but this brand right here actually gave us a better quality hat than the New Era, and the construction, and look at that stitching. This is awesome. I love that stitching. So it's on the FK Iron website. We have both. We have the Stealth and the True Color available on fkirons.com right now. It's 38 bucks, $38.95, I believe. And we have 500. I mean, we have less than 500 because we went live the other day. I think we saw 150 already. So I don't know if they're going to be limited edition or not. Maybe they all will because we only ordered 500. So check them out on the website in the merch side of the website, the FK Iron Pro Team. What else? Now we're not gonna do fitted hat because, you know, then you have to deal with a lot of sizes. And look at that. This one is snapback, and you know, fits really nice. Fits really, really nice. So one size fit all. Keep it simple. All right, guys, so we're coming close to the end of the show. Any other question? What do you think about the cartridge needle and the new Stigma line? I have not tried that. That is one machine that I have not tried. And so then I cannot talk about it. I have some Dan Kubins. I really like his machines as well. He's a pretty smart guy. He puts out really good quality work. Who's Amador? All right, guys. What else? What oil do you recommend? The oil that I recommend is the oil that ships with our machine, and very, very, very little oil. Remember, oil is the enemy of the motor. So use always PTFE oil. Do not use any other motor for any other type. Do not use anything else because PTFE oil, first of all, is safe to use and safe for the skin. Sorry, don't quote me on that. I'm gonna do my research. But it's used in the food industry, so I'm assuming that has to be safe. What else? How many machines do I have? Man, I don't even know. I have cases with machine, like bins, with machine, which I'm actually thinking about putting all in display in my new office. Hi there, I was changing the stroke today in my Halo 2 and I broke the screw. Oops! Do you sell? I look on the website. Well, you're gonna have to, if you strip the screw, you're probably gonna have to buy the new cam, because the screw is stuck and if you cannot retract it. But yes, I don't know if we have the strokes on the website because we never got that request actually. But you can actually send us an email, orders@fkirons.com, and ask for the cam, the stroke, and we'll be able to arrange that for you. Superlube, yeah. Superlube is PTFE. You can use that. All right, guys. So with Daniel Valeries, just want to thank you as well for these before you go. All right, man. So, guys, this is going to be it for tonight. Remember, every Sunday, if I'm in town, if I'm not at a convention, next week I am going to be at the United Ink Tattoo Show with world famous. I'm actually going to be at the world famous booth. I am going to be with our line of machines. I'm going to be working for them. So Lou Rubino is going to be my boss on Sunday. And we're going to be there in New York. So if you're in New York and you want to take a look at the Scion, come by the booth. Probably there are going to be guys using the Scion. Dina Cook, thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching this live broadcast. And that's it. I'm probably going to do next Sunday a live broadcast from New York. Maybe something, shaky and movie because I may be at the show or on the plane. I don't know where I'm going to be. But I'm going to try to do one on Sunday. If I can, I'll do one during the week, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys again in another episode right here on YouTube. Take care. Good night. Happy Monday, everyone. Bye-bye.